All right, all right. The week has finally come. Here we are, Mobile, Alabama. We are right now, I believe, located. Let me pull up the old trusty map because I want to say that we're around about 30 minutes away. Yeah, we're about 35 minutes away from Hancock Whitney Stadium, which was where practices are going to be held around this time tomorrow. We'll be wrapping up the last little bit of practice. But, guys, welcome on in. We are live from Mobile, Alabama for the Panini Senior Bowl. They wrapped up the introductory interviews earlier today. They are starting practice tomorrow. So we are excited for that. But at the end of the day, guys, we are live. This is the Southern Sports Scene yet again. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Sill. Y'all do us a favor. Y'all hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a short out here as we continue to bring you the absolute best coverage from all things college football. Like I said, guys, we are live from Daphne, Alabama in the Holiday Inn Express. So a little bit of a change of scenery. But everybody do us a favor. Going over to our friends at frostbuddy.com, click the link below to get yourself 15% off when you use code SSS15 there. And when you go on over to our friends at Check Nutrition, guys, kick off the new year with 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, and 1 gram of sugar in every scoop of protein. Coffee, get it started the right way when you use promo code SSS15. Okay. We obviously have some things that we need to talk about in regards to where the Senior Bowl is going to be at from here. Guys, it's going to be a great week. And I have never been more excited than when we went last year, and we had a blast. I mean, an absolute blast at the end of the day. Even though we only went there for one day, guys, it was so much fun being able to be a part of the Senior Bowl, be a part of the action that was going on throughout the week, guys. It was just a lot of fun to be able to meet new faces, meet some really, really cool people there at the Senior Bowl, and knowing that Drew Fabian batch, it's supposed to be a bit of a more fun experience for the media nowadays. Hopefully, it'll be about the same as it was, even more fun than it was last year, guys. Every year, it's always a blast to be able to be a part of an event like this. But today, I want to go over like what I'm going to expect from the entirety of practice this week. We're not going to go to the game. We're not going to be covering that. I would, to be honest with you, I get more insight from when I go to practice and when I go and evaluate these dudes in one-on-ones, in 7-on-7s, in pass pro, through Indy. You know, it's little things like that that, in my opinion, matter a lot more compared to the actual game itself. So we got the call-in link in the description right now. I'm about to post the StreamYard link if you guys want to get involved in the show. So there it is. But y'all, make sure you do us a favor. Holler at us on YouTube, like, share, subscribe wherever you want. All right, let's get into it. So I want to talk about a couple of guys that I think can really have a breakout week this week in Mobile. Starting off with, I think this is the obvious one in my opinion, and I think that's Taylen Green. I have been very high on Taylen Green all season long. As inconsistent as he's been, you know, throughout his time as a quarterback for Arkansas, guys, he is an explosive playmaker. You want to talk about somebody that can break a game wide open. I think he's been about the same compared to this year and last year. I know he didn't throw the football as much. I think he was a little bit more active with his feet, which is a good thing. I mean, you talk about an Arkansas team that a couple of games go their way. They're bowl eligible this year. Could have very well been bowl eligible this year. I think he unlocked a new factor to his game. Didn't get sacked a whole lot as he did last year. And that was a big part of what I saw as improvement from Taylor. Thought he was much more efficient this year. I thought he commanded the how do I say it? He was able to handle the pressure well, even though chaos around him was obviously bringing him affliction. And I think that's it's so important when we talk about a prospect like him, because when you talk about somebody that can build character and somebody that's obviously been through hardship, and for him to keep a level head throughout the majority of the year, guys, that's impressive. I mean, how many guys can realistically say that they went through a head coach getting fired in the middle of their season and say that they were able to keep a level head? Not a whole lot. I certainly wouldn't have. It rattled me a little bit. Guys, Taylor Green played at elite levels at times during the year. Is he able to translate that to the next level? That's going to be the big question that a lot of people are going to ask. Thought he ran the football effectively. Look, the last couple of games, and especially when he got hurt after Missouri, I think that's what put a dent into his game. I mean, I say that in the last 4 games, just inconsistency hurt him greatly. That's why he got benched. After the Missouri game, that's when you see a guy like KJ Jackson come in and play sparingly in those 3 games. But again, Taylor Green was the guy that kind of held the glue all together and kept you in a lot of football games. I think if he's able to put it a good week this week in Alabama, I think he can turn himself into a draft pick. He's got the frame for a quarterback, and he's got a big arm. He is a hell of an athlete when we talk about being one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. Not saying that he is, because obviously last year's results don't prove it. But I do believe that he has an opportunity to be rid of some of the things that were said about him during the regular season for him to put together a much better week this week in Mobile. But let's go on to the rest of our quarterbacks that I think could potentially be in the running as a potential, I wouldn't necessarily say steal of a pick, but I will say that teams that could end up raising their draft stock at the end of the day. I really like Luke Altmaier. I've been very high on Luke Altmaier ever since last year. Thought he was very efficient. Back-to-back seasons, when you throw for 44 touchdowns and just 11 interceptions in those 2 games, it's impressive. It's very impressive. I didn't think he had the best game against Tennessee. I thought he was efficient, and I thought he stood tall in the pocket, and he got out of it when he needed to. His offensive line took a beating this year. That wasn't the same offensive line that was as dominant as they were at times, especially in the second half of the year for Illinois. The last 4 games of the season, they were incredible. And I know they only played South Carolina, Northwestern, and Rutgers, and Michigan State. But still, you look at where that offensive line was at as a whole, they took a beating badly this year. And part of it has to do with the lack of depth. Another part of it has to do with, I would say, the disappointment of what people expected Illinois to be this year. I mean, you talk about them being a preseason top 15 team, got to number 9 in the nation, got embarrassed by Indiana. Then after that, it was kind of wouldn't necessarily say downhill, but you have 3 losses that year in which offensively you just were anemic. But even in those times, Luke Altmaier, you would expect quarterbacks to kind of have off days at times. He did, but I mean, when you talk about his efficiency, it's hard to say that he had an inefficient game throwing the football. He never had a game under 60% throwing the football, which is impressive for a quarterback. I mean, you talk about what other quarterbacks have looked like on off days, and I mean, really off. I mean, apart from guys like Fernando Mendoza or, I don't know, Diego Pavia, guys like that, it's hard for a quarterback of his stature to have a day like he did, or really a season like he did, where he has over a 60% completion rate in every single game that he plays. Fernando Mendoza didn't have that. Diego Pavia didn't have that. And they finished in the top. They were 1 and 2 in the Heisman race. I think Julian Sayin was one of the only ones that didn't have a completion percentage below 60%. Yeah, his lowest one was 62.9 for Julian Sayin. Luke Altmaier's lowest was 60% twice. So you talk about that, you're talking about one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the country. That's the type of game that you're going to get from a guy like that. He's not a check down artist, too. He gets it to playmakers, and they work in space, find room to run. It's what type of guy that he is, and that's the type of quarterback that Luke Altmaier has been the last 2 years at Illinois. I'm really excited to see him really improve as a whole throughout this week at Senior Bowl. Here's one that interests me, and it may be one that you and I may not considerably like, but I mean, guys, this is a very important week for a guy like this, and that's Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier has to be able to get off to a great start this week. Let's just be honest. 6'1", 202 pounds. So when you look at the entirety of this season, Garrett just did not look comfortable at all this year. I mean, when you struggle with the injury this year, you have a season like you did, and you can't help but shake your head and wonder what if. I mean, he was under a lot of duress this year, no question about that. But I mean, he was a check down artist this year. There wasn't a whole lot of deep shots that he threw down the field. And I think he struggled with his toughness. I think he struggled greatly with communication at the line of scrimmage. NFL draft scouts are going to notice that, and they're going to say. So I think this is a good week for him to clear his head. I think he's had plenty of time recovering from his oblique injury, which in my opinion, I think he just tapped out. I think after that Bama game, he was done. I don't think he was healthy at all, and I just personally think he just did not want to play anymore. That's just my opinion. You don't have to like what I have to say, but my opinion is my opinion, and it's very fair that I say something like that. So you talk about a guy that has so much potential. I mean, we were talking earlier this season about him having first round grades and how he could potentially be the first two, him and, whether it be Lenore Sellers or Cade Klubnik or Arch Manning being the first two quarterbacks taken off the board this year. You see what he does this season. It's just was a struggle for him. Just wasn't an efficient quarterback, and you never saw the same type of mentality of him just slinging the football down the field, smart quarterback play that you saw a year ago, especially the second half of the year when you played teams like Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Baylor. I think LSU fans were deceived at the last 3 games, and they thought, hey, this is an opportunity for us to potentially steal some momentum, potentially be a playoff team. Obviously, that wasn't the case. So I think this is a massive week for him just to be able to improve his game as a whole, and hopefully he is able to do that, man. I mean, I like Garrett. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's got a big future in front of him, but he has another down week this year. I don't see a place where he's going to be even a draftable player. Right now, I have him borderline day 3, maybe an UDFA. This week can change it. He can go from that to a day 3 pick, or he can go from him to being undrafted. Sorry. Here's one that you're not going to know. Cole Payton. You want to talk about the best athlete out of every quarterback that is on the field for this week? Cole Payton is exactly that. Cole Payton just gives you a look that you haven't seen yet in college football. And having seen him while he was at North Dakota State, obviously he's going to get a little bit of pushback, I guess, from it. And among other things, guys, I really, really like him. I think Cole Payton is one of these guys that is going to have the longest career out of every quarterback that's on this list. Now, granted, he has 1 year, full season of playing football, which could eventually hurt him. But I will say, guys, when you talk about one of the better athletes in the country, holy cow. Like, he has something that just blows my mind. Missed the last 8 games of the last year with an injury to his non-throwing shoulder. Bring it back, and you have 29 total touchdowns last year. You blow the FCS out of the water. Strong dual threat guy. When he gets outside the pocket, he makes difficult throws in traffic that not many other quarterbacks are making right now. It's very impressive, to say the least. And man, he's a guy that I really, really should be high on. Cole Payton is one of those dudes that will make any team successful. They have him right now as day 3. I have him midday 2. I think if he shows out this week, he is going to get himself a bigger contract when it's all said and done. Might be a backup to start off his career. Man, you get him developed. You put him in backup duty, bam, your guy gets hurt. Cole Payton, you can throw in, and I think he'd thrive in an NFL offense. I think he's a high football. I think he's got a high football IQ. You got to have one, obviously, if you want to play quarterback at the Division I level, whether it be FCS or FBS. I think that you're going to get the best out of a guy like Cole Payton, and as he's really special. He is going to have a very bright future in the NFL. So that's all what I have when it comes to quarterback play. Let's go to the wide receiver room. So wide receiver is interesting this year because this is actually I wouldn't necessarily say depleted I would say that I've seen better wide receiver cores than what we're getting right now. Um, Man, you know who really impresses me off the jump is a guy like Barryon Brown. Small but explosive. That's all you really have to say when we talk about a guy like that. You also look at a guy like Eli Surratt. I don't know if he's going to be yet at the Senior Bowl this year. This is the roster that I was given and that I printed out. So let me see real fast if he's even on the roster. He should, but I'm not quite sure. Should be up there. Never mind. He's not on there. I figured he would call out, but Kalen Black will be from uh, Indiana. That's going to be one of your few Indiana guys. Actually, I think it's your only Indiana guy. Trey Wallace is awesome, dude. I got to see Trey Wallace in the Sugar Bowl. Dude, Trey Wallace took over the last two games of the season for Ole Miss. He is such a dynamic receiver off the jump, 5'11", and when he gets out of his break, guys, you want to talk about how impressive of a dude that this dude is. He's going to be very, very special for a lot of teams around the NFL. You know, 61 catches, 934, and 4 scores. He's not a touchdown-making machine. When he gets the football out in space, he can be 88 and out the gate. It's impressive to say the least. I mean, averaged 15 yards of reception, and he was a big reason why Trinidad Chambliss was so efficient throughout the year. He finds a safety valve to Trey Wallace, and he's able to turn up the field and get yards. You saw it a lot in the Sugar Bowl. You saw it a lot in the regular season. You know, Mississippi State was one game that I think is a good example. You saw him make some clutch catches against Florida. Kentucky was a massive one for him. So I just see a very, very long future for Trey Wallace in the NFL. I think he's going to find himself in a very interesting position when it is all said and done. Kevin Coleman is a guy that I'm also pretty ecstatic about. He's a speed guy. He is a very, very quick dude. I mean, you get him out in space, he can be extremely dangerous. I think somebody like him will make an NFL team a lot of money. Kevin Coleman, I think, is going to be more of a special teamer, though, at the next level. I think that's where he'll end up finding the most success. Did see a good bit of him returning some punts to start the season. I think he ended off in a really good note. I think he's going to continue to take that throughout this week. I think we'll see a lot of special teams play. Him returning punts a little bit in Indo practice or in pre-practice. But yeah, man, I think that's where he's going to be best at the next level to start off at least. And then once he gets his feet wet, I think he'll be a really clean route runner for whomever he is with. So that's my two wide receivers that I think is going to break out this year. But man, I'd watch out for guys like Jacoby Lane. You know, when I talk about him, I'm just amazed at what his film looks like. Caleb Douglas and Reggie Virgil. I had a lot of fun watching those two guys throughout the season, really take over that Texas Tech receiving core. Two guys that I didn't really think would be much of a factor going into the year. And then just seeing how explosive they were, despite the depth that Texas Tech had at receiver, they really did a good job of holding their own. And each of them played complementary football. They complemented each other every time they stepped out onto the field. And I think that's what's most impressive when I see those two play. Going to the running back position, I think your two Penn State guys are two of the best running backs in this draft class behind Jeremiah Love. Both of them bring a dynamic asset to their game. We've seen a lot of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, both of which dominate out the backfield. Katron Allen's more of your north and south type of runner. Nick Singleton is that shifty back that can just make you miss at any time. 2026 in this draft class for the running back position, I just don't know what I'm going to get. You're talking about two top 5 running backs right now in the NFL draft. I know people are going to be high on guys like him and Jonah Coleman, but man, it's hard to deny what those two have done over the last year. Despite what all happened with the rest of the year for those two guys, those two are really, really dominant on the ground. I think both of them, displaying the type of performances that they've had over the years is impressive, to say the least. Katron Allen had the better season of the two. I know Nick Singleton's had this up and down type of career with Penn State, but I still think, I really, really do still think that they are still two of the best backs in this NFL draft cycle. It's not just on combine measurements, and it's not just based on what they look like with their height and weight. Go turn the film on of them. Go see them at their peak and see what type of damage they can do to an NFL defense. You make the decision at the end of the day. Here's an underrated back that I think is going to make himself a little name. That's Seth McGowan. I got an opportunity to cover him a little bit. Took a JUCO route for a couple years after getting into some trouble during his freshman year of college. Found his way back onto this Kentucky roster along with him and Dante Dowdle. Two guys that I thought had solid years for this Kentucky rushing offense that, he was one of the only ones that really lit a spark into that offense for the most part of the season. I think he might end up having a decent week this week. I really do. I think he's going to be a name that you need to watch out for. When it comes to the offensive line, dude, where do I start? Because this offensive line room is extremely deep. About guys like Trey Zune, who's going to be a first-round pick. Fernando Carmona has an opportunity to increase his draft stock. Dude, he's already I would expect him to be an early day 2 pick. You talk about him, Keelan Brutledge, who was just physical, one of the most physical offensive linemen in the draft. Jake Slaughter, to me, is the best center in the NFL draft. The best center. That's a reason why he's he's an All-American. There's a reason why he was a first-team All-Conference. Showed it to you on the field. I think he's going to find himself onto an NFL roster, and I think he might end up putting himself into the first-round conversation. I mean, he's already in it, but he's just going to continue to build upon it. Markel Bell is the freak of the week, though, man. Markel Bell is probably the biggest human being in Mobile right now. 6'9", 340 freaking pounds. And right now, I think he's raw talent. dude, you get him developed. How do you stop somebody like that? It's impossible. But how are you going to be able to stop a guy that's just been completely dominant all season long? That I think, again, you could see draft stock rising for him. Let's go to tight ends. The tight end room has a lot of talent. The one guy, though, that I think is going to increase his draft stock at the end of the day is going to be Tanner Kozoil. I know people are going to talk about Josh Cuevas and what he did this past year for Alabama. I know. Tanner Kozoil is a freaking dog. You want to talk about tough? That's the toughest freaking tight end I have seen in a while. I think he's genuinely better compared to guys like Mike Trigg or the Oregon and running tight end and other guys like around college football. Dude, he's going to be dude, he may end up turning himself into being the best. I mean, the best tight end in this NFL draft. He's going to be the best tight end when it's all said and done at the end of the year. And when you compare him to guys like him and Stowers and Max Clark and Jack Andrews, guys like that, guys, he's so much more dynamic. Tough as nails, clutch, great hands, does need to work on his run blocking and his footwork as well. Eli Stowers, to me, is more of a hybrid type of tight end. You can line him up everywhere on the field, and he's just going to make plays. Kozoil is a pure tight end. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing for him, and I'm not trying to get into a comparison war. But, guys, when you talk about guys like that, there's a reason why I'm so high on him is that naturally that's his position. And I think he's going to thrive in it. I really do. Let's go to the defensive line. And, man, how can you have a defensive line room without talking about arguably the best defensive lineman in this one than Romello Height? 10 sacks this past year. And by the way, a pure edge rusher. I think he does need to get better in run support, but I'd expect him to take a lot of first-team reps come tomorrow. Him and Vincent Anthony. Vincent Anthony is another pure edge rusher. Logan Fano, man, he scares the hell out of me. And played a lot of hybrid. He's a Spanish Fork, Utah guy. Look, Logan Fano can turn it on at any given moment. He really can. Crazy as this sounds. Logan Fano is one of those guys that's a downhill dog. He's going to come up and make tackles, and then he's going to put you on your back. He's great in run support, and then you can play him in a rover type of backer role. He can come off the edge, make plays, and then he can drop back into coverage and get interceptions. I think that that's what he's going to end up doing at the next level for Utah. TJ Parker, you pretty much know about him. Danny Dennis-Sutton, for the most part, I thought had a pretty decent year, but I think there's still more to his potential than we're realizing. Zion Young, though, I think could be my biggest riser after this week. I have a very good feeling about him. Him and Derek Moore are both really, really solid off the edge. When it comes to the defensive tackles, I think Tim Keenan, obviously, as a lot of people, brings a lot of eyeballs to him. Um, no kidding. Caleb Banks, though, man, could be the best defensive lineman in this role. I really do. Between him and Jeffrey Mba having 5 sacks from his interior position, that's impressive. And I think he's going to continue to stand out after this whole week. At the linebacker position, I got to start off with Savian Sorsey. I loved watching him play at Arkansas. And he's a 100 tackle guy, and he gets off, and he can line up in a variety of different positions, and he can rush the passer really well. Scooby Williams is my guy that's going to make a name for himself. Jacob Rodriguez. I mean, what more can I say about him? I have been high on the freaking stash, which, by the way, I'm copying. I've been high on J-Rod all year. What else? What other good things do you want me to say about him other than he's a damn good player, and there's a reason why he's a first-round grade type of back? He just proves it on the field. You see it in his mentality. You see it the way he talks. He talked earlier today. This is a guy that was a former walk-on that was sleeping on the floor of his brother's apartment while he was a walk-on at Texas Tech. Went from playing quarterback at Virginia, goes to Texas Tech, transitions to linebacker, and you look at the impact that he's made in the 4 years that he played at Texas Tech. See how quickly that team turned around. Guys, to be fair, he could have transferred after, 2024, after the disaster of a defense that they had. He could have left, but he decided to stay. Shell Wood brought him the right tools, and he turned him into a top 5 finish in the Heisman race. Hell of a story for him. And then overall at defensive back, that's including safeties and corners as well. Jalen McMurray just screams shutdown corner. He's a bit undersized at 5'10" and 180 pounds, but he is a ball hawk. And you want to talk about somebody that can make an impact at the next level? That's what Jalen McMurray gives you. Not an interception guy, but guys, he comes up and he helps out well in run support. Think he can end up making a transition if he puts on some more weight into a hybrid safety role, whether it be at nickel or a dime package. Guys, he's that type of an elite receiver or a DB. Jalen McMurray just reminds me so much. Wouldn't necessarily say Tre'Davious White, because I think Trey White is a bit taller than him. No, they're about the same height and size. Trey White's from about 5'11". Jalen McMurray 6 foot. So I think it'd be fair to say that I wouldn't really consider them similar. But I think when it comes to how they attack run support, they're very similar in both of those ways. I think his hip fluidity is really impressive, to say the least. So I expect a good week from him. I think it's going to happen. I'm really excited to see him at the end of the day. I want to talk about somebody that's a run stopper that could be better this week, though. And my pick for the rising star in this NFL draft class, it is Hezekiah Massis. You want to talk about somebody that had a spectacular year this year? That's Hezekiah Massis. 5 interceptions this year, 31 tackles, 12 pass deflections. The fact that you still challenged him off the offside corner is it's quite damning to me, to say the least. Transferred in from FIU and ended up turning himself into a second-team All-American and a first-team All-ACC. He's one of the best DBs in the ACC and ended up being 7th nationally with 5 interceptions on this season. Ball hawk. Don't challenge him on the outside. Guys, I'm excited to watch him in one-on-ones. That's a dude right there. That is a dude playing DB. For the safety position, 2 guys are on my list. It's Jalen Kilgore, who's a really should have been All-American at South Carolina, and then Bud Clark, 5-year guy who's been with TCU all 5 years. Guys, scouts notice that. He's not transferring everywhere. Bud Clark is going to be a guy to watch this week. And I am just as ecstatic as I can be getting ready to watch him. And, man, I'm excited for it, man. I really am. Kid's going to be a special player. And all I can say is Bud Clark is the most underrated safety in the NFL draft. Everybody like Caleb Downs. Everybody like, I don't know, not Kamari Ramsey, but VJ Payne or Michael Taft are going to get all of the credit. Don't you forget about number 21 from TCU. Been with the same program for 5 years. 5 years. Guy doesn't quit either. But y'all have a great rest of the night, man. Thank you so much for hopping on in for our Senior Bowl preview. We'll have interviews this week. We'll get some videos uploaded to our YouTube. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay blessed. Don't stress. Y'all have a great rest of the week.